welcome to my channel and to this video. Dear students and audience, today we are going to have a discussion on the short story, The Gatekeeper's Wife. This is a very important short story and is written by Rukhsana Ahmed. This writer is a prolific Pakistani writer and has been writing different, essays, short stories, and novel as well. She has all the time tried to focus on the issues of women and not only the social and political issues of women but also the domestic issues of women. This particular short story and other short stories included in this book focus on the psychological trauma of the woman at home and the sources which are important in this regard not only are internal but also external. The Gatekeeper's Wife, this very title, has a very significant indications in it. For example, first of all, it is about the wife. This word wife used in the title is not in the sense of wife of Bath by Chaucer, but in the sense of a domestic woman or the married woman who lives with the husband and tries to play her life inside the house as well as outside the house, and what type of difficulties she would like to face and what are difficulties which are present in her way, and because of that frequently she has to undergo the silence, and sometimes she has to feel bad only, and sometimes she has to compete with the husband as well as the world outside, and sometimes it also happens that she has to lose in the end and go under resignation. Then the word is gatekeepers. The gatekeepers are the people, in the literal sense of the word, the people who take care of the gates and the doors. But here, symbolically speaking, can be the gates which are the social gates, which are the doors which may be open for some time and may not be open for the women. And when these are open, what kind of problems women would face, and when these are closed, what traumas the women possibly can have. This is the theme and the main indication of the short story. But this short story ranges from Pakistan to, England, because here characters are not only the Pakistani characters but also the white masters characters, that is Annette. And in this way, this is the type of interaction between the two cultures. What happens to a man when he is in England or in the Western world or in USA? And then the same man comes back to Pakistan, what kind of psychology occurs in him, and in the same fashion, if a woman is British, or if she is American, and she is free, liberal, and has her way of life, what happens at that time when she is in the society like ours? The setting of the story is Lahore, and most probably this is the colonial Lahore when lots of other white women were present in Lahore, and Lahore was the beautiful residing place, and the timing is again that of the colonial times, but the summer months are indicated here. In comparison to a woman who is inside the beautifully decorated, well provided home, we have been provided another character who is quite a direct contrast to Annette. And though she's very poor, the gatekeeper's wife definitely, she is, of course, the person who can stand erect in front of Annette in order to prove that whatever she is not that important and that good and that successful as the gatekeeper's wife is going to be. So these are some of the issues the story would be debating, and let's enter into it. And let's read first of all the first passage. Two men had died of heat stroke the day before. It was a record summer for sweltering temperature, and it felt irritated by the mindless cruelty of the sun, remembering how hushed and still all the birds in the aviary had been the day before, how listless all the magnificent cats were. Surely it had to stop. 110 degrees Fahrenheit was a ridiculous peak to maintain, enough to turn the most dedicated sun worshippers into apostates. At the best of times, Lahore Zoo was not a perfect place for animals. These temperatures were putting their lives at serious risk. It must stop soon. So that is the passage, the introductory passage. Three, four things are highlighted in this passage. One is the Anet, definitely a woman character, but the name goes to suggest she's not Pakistani. She is the person from outside, so the story is linked with the outside world as well. Secondly, we know the Asian heat, especially the heat of Lahore, heat of Pakistan in the summer season. This heat can be as high as possible, sometimes unbearable for the human beings, but equally it is unbearable for the animals. We may be taking care of the human beings that they are suffering from heat, but very little number of people go to take care of the birds and the animals when it is that much heat. So the story goes to show that not only human beings are important, but also the animals and the birds are also important. And in that way, two kinds of animals like aviary birds and then the magnificent cats, that's definitely the tigers and the lions that have been referred to. And then the word Lahore Zoo goes to tell us that the story is going to be about the animals which are caged in the zoo. So this goes to reverberate in our minds the story, another story that is included in the students of my classes. That is again the zoo. That story also goes to talk about by Tariq Rahman. The story was written, and the story talks about the zoo animals. But here, in the same way as Tariq Rahman tried to link the animal words with the human word, in the same way in the story too, animal words have been linked with the human words. So that's the kind of story we are going to read, and the heat of the sun has been in this passage further highlighted and signified by letting us know that even the people who worship sun, they would become apostates when the sun is so hot. So in that way, the story has number of issues to be discussed in it. But let's focus first of all about Annette. Annette, as I said already, she's not the local character in that sense of the word. So let's focus just on the green lines in order to be quick in the discussion of the story. Her short sun-bleached hair spiked away from her face as she pushed away fingers through it. So feeling wizened and faded, she rubbed the sides of her skirt with both hands in a vain attempt to iron out the creases. Time to go. It was nearly 5 o'clock, but the sun, not seeming to notice this, still blazed down eventually on the breathless, parched scene below. It means that Annette is to go outside into the world from the comfortable environment of her home. And although the timing is that of 5 p.m., but still the hot sun is coming up, and that hot sun is making itself felt on the face of that woman as well. And she therefore decides ultimately to go out because she's taken up a duty, and that duty she needs to perform even if that much heat is there. So the woman is preparing herself to go outside in order to perform a duty, not to visit any market area. So let us see what she does when she goes outside. But before she goes, the environment of the home, the richness of the home, and the comfortableness of the home has been provided by mentioning that Kamu was the person who was holding uh, a glass of lime juice with soda, not only for her but also for her husband. And the question which is asked in different styles of the word Sahab Agya. In Urdu, this question is asked, and that goes to show that the man has not yet come back home, and he's being awaited by the woman before he comes. But she has to go outside even in the absence of her man. And that is the inclusion of the Urdu words, which makes it very much Pakistani, which goes to talk about the appropriateness and negation and mixturing of the language, English language, and creating a particular type of Pakistani English, which may be called postcolonial English as well by the Pakistani writers. This paragraph is the clear cut proof of that. So, the servant, the soda, and then the Urdu, all these things intermix with each other in order to highlight how luxuriously the colonial masters and the people who had the money at that time, even, they lived inside their houses. And let's now see what happens next. Not back yet, won't see him now until dinner. He was supposed to go for golf at 5:30, so he's chinning at the club again. He could have telephoned. 9 years of this and it still hurts. The small passage that I selected It goes to show that the man has not come back yet. He doesn't take care of the fact that the woman has to go outside and she should be back. Rather, he continues to perform his own duties, his own games, his own styles of life without caring for the woman. And uh, we are also shown that 9 years of marriage has taken place, but still it hurts because the husband doesn't take care. And so, in that way, the gap between the husband and the wife is being highlighted by the writer, that this is the woman who is already feeling the gap, not only because of the absence of women, but also psychologically they are not that much attached, because the husband is not even telephoning that he's like getting late and she can go to her duty. So, in that way, the domestic issues and the things related with that are highlighted. Again, the green area, the heat outside lashed her face as she hastened into the cool protection of the blue Toyota. The zoo was not far from their house on the GOR estate. 37 years after the British left, it was still the most privileged address in Lahore with its exclusive government officers' residence. Still standing in their vast lawns behind exclusive boundary walls, faded but desperately holding on to the aloofness of their old masters. Very interestingly, the writer has provided us not only the timing of the story, but also the setting of the story, place setting of the story once again, by letting us know that the time of the story is 37 years after the British have left. Now, in 47, the British left. Now, it is 37 ahead, it's 70s. The time is about 70s, 1970s, when the story is being enacted. We can say that some of the remnants of the white people are still present in Lahore, and there is a residence area located just beside the zoo where the people are still living, that is government officers' residences. And Annette is one of the wives of these people. And she owns, or they own, a car also, which is of Toyota company, very much important now even. And in the 70s, it was the sole ruler of the automobile markets of Pakistan. So in that way, some of the realism, some of the reality around the people has also been told in order to reduce the fictional aspect of the story. The short story continues to highlight the place, and the description is given in a very detailed way so that the readers can understand the place situated in Lahore. And again, the GOR, that is Government Officers' Residences, the place which was luxurious place even after the departure of the British people 37 years after the departure of the British people. So that is the mention of Lahore once again, mention of Zoo Lahore once again, which is contributory in making this short story as the Pakistani piece of literature. So in that way, the woman keeps on traveling, and she reaches ultimately the zoo, where let's see the paragraph. The gatekeeper interrupted his role of town crier to open the gates for Annette's car. They drove towards the depot, past the last few stragglers and the superintendent's residence located at the far end. Hassan was all prepared for her arrival. Books and registers, buckets and pans laid out in the veranda, where he sat on what looked like a dried out chair, his feet cracked and dusty, sticking out of the thongs of his chapel. This paragraph goes to show not only, on the one hand, the difference between the rich women and the poor gatekeeper, Mr. Hussain, and here, we also try to see that the very roles being performed by the two characters. One is the character Annette herself, what a powerful role she's performing as a woman, and what a low-lying role of the gatekeeper who is doing the duty of the town crier as well as that of the gate. And Hassan, another superintendent type of character, type of person involved with the maintaining of the zoo, that is also present in this paragraph. And we come to know that the duty of Annette, that the job of Annette that she is going to perform, and responsibility of Annette is to come to the zoo, check the registers and buckets of the food and the pans, and how the food is being delivered to the animals. That is the duty of Annette. Now, where from this duty came, that we are told in this passage, that Mem Sahab has come in the place, and she is going to check all this. And after the food is checked, and two or three men distribute that food here and there, and she's been very strict about the animals, and in that way, once she visited the zoo and animals were thin and were underfed and were not good, she's been writing letters to the governor of that time, and ultimately the superintendent was sacked, and she was given a power that she should go and check all the meats, foods which the animals were being given by the local administration. In that way, she proved herself a supervisor type of person, and she was playing her role in a very good way. But now the question is to be raised that okay, she's doing this. She goes to show her love for the animals. She wants the animals to be good. But then this is Lahore. This is formerly colonized country. This country has its own culture. How much she can survive in this culture? How much the culture will be trying to overlap on her designs and plans in order to perform her duty, and how much her home or domesticity will influence the kind of job she's going to do, and ultimately what kind of frustration, shock, and trauma she will be receiving, and what is that the writer is trying to put across. Now, you see here, let us read these few lines. To this day, she had never been late. Hassan got into a routine of being ready for her, terrified of what might happen if she became angry again. The gatekeeper Maja, thought her an interfering busybody. This paragraph goes to show the, punctuality and regularity of Annette, that she visited the zoo exactly at 5 and she was never late. On the one hand, Hussain was terrified of her because, as per her report, Hussain could be dismissed. So that is why he was always very much careful. Gatekeeper Maja, he doesn't consider good of this woman. He gives the title busybody, interfering busybody. So that's the kind of response which she generates. Even after being a powerful woman, even after being a white woman, she generates this type of response from a local Pakistani who is thinking about her, that she lands in the zoo without need and she's a busybody, trying to show herself busybody. That's the kind of concept which most of the men possibly can have about the women who go outside, the rich women especially, go outside and try to show that they are busy, they are performing some job. They may be right, they may be doing the things as they want to do, but the kind of impression they generate among the men, especially the common folks, is not that good. It is the kind of impression that these women are trying to be very busy, but they are not so. So, this is the general reflection portrayed by the writer about such rich and powerful women. Let's go down the story and see more about this. And here is another paragraph that's very important, and that actually goes to highlight the gist of the story. The women had an eye on Hira, but she didn't seem unduly worried. Annette almost gasped as she saw her, leaned forward and put her arm through the bars to lift a couple of hunks of meat and slip them speedily into a limp polythene bag. She was a tall woman, thin, lithe, her mission accomplished. She rose and dashed swiftly away with such speed as would have done Hira's credit. In the dusky gloom, Annette felt a frantic need to sit down as her body swayed, weak with the shock. She waited to collect herself for a few moments, wondering what had held her back from challenging the women. Surely she should have yelled at her. This passage is really very interesting, and here is the center of the story. We are being told about a woman, and who is with that woman? She is the gatekeeper's wife, and we are given some of the characteristics of the physical appearance of that woman. That she was tall, she was thin, and she was very active as well, having one style of appearance. That woman comes very close to the cage of Hira. Now, Hira is a cat, as if you read the whole leftover lines, you can find out that this is an animal, a cat, a cheetah, and a tiger, let's say, and that is having diamond-like eyes, and so the title is given Hira to this animal. So when this animal is fed by Hussein and other two people, it means that the food of this Hira is the raw meat which is put before him, and he's not coming direct in order to eat that. And in the meanwhile, this woman comes in very close to the cage where Nobody is allowed to come, and she comes, however, and the scene is being watched by Annette. Why this woman has come there? And that woman puts her arm inside the food of this tiger, Hira, and she snatches some of the meat from there, puts in the small plastic bag, and runs away very frantically. This Annette is at this moment watching this scene as shocked, possibly, and is thinking, how dare this woman do that by putting her life in risk? And how she could do all these things in her presence when she was to take care of the food of the animals, how she could steal this meat, this piece of meat. But Annette was unable to stop, unable to stand, unable to challenge that woman, unable to cry, unable to stop that woman from stealing the food. Now, this is the courage, difference of courage, difference of the shock which the sensitive soul of a rich woman may be having, and how daring, how courageous that woman was, a poor woman of Pakistan, she can be. And this is the major difference highlighted between the two women. That one is showing her courage and is entering into the area where she could be killed by the cat, but she snatches the food from the mouth of the cat. And the other woman, who is quite rich, powerful, and has the power to stop and govern over the human being, but still she is unable to stop that woman. This is the difference of feministic aspects of post-colonial countries that is highlighted by the writer as well. So the scene is that the woman has snatched the food and she's taken the food of the animal away, and Annette was unable to stop that. But she was angry. She wanted to tell someone. She wanted to share her story, and so she tells a story to the husband Salim that this thing could happen. But Salim was not in a mood to listen to her. He rather cut a joke at her and puts the question to her that when the food was snatched, why didn't you ring the police? And instead of feeling sad or encouraging her or removing her psychological trauma and shock at that time, even when she puts the question to her husband, what is so funny in it? The husband says, you're policing the sort of moral crisis you have come to. His laughter had an unpleasant, chilly edge to it, widening the distance between them. And this goes to show that husband is critical of the performance of his wife. Probably he doesn't like this. And that woman, when she tells the story, she is under the shock. And instead of receiving comfortable words, she receives very ironical words. And her statement, her behavior is termed as the moral crisis by her husband. So, this is the kind of difference between the husband and the wife. And this is the kind of response which comes from the men inside the house. The men outside the house are obedient to Annette, but the man inside the house is mostly ironic, mostly trying to put her away, mostly not caring of herself. And that is the kind of crisis which is occurring. That is the crisis which is making her weak, and that is why perhaps she was unable to stop that woman even at that time when she was stealing the meat. So you see here, the husband tells a story to his wife by telling that there was Miss Ho, was the wife of Consul General of Tehran. Uh, when Papa was posted there back in 40s, she loved horses, loved them very much indeed. Her routine was to go out every afternoon, scouting down the streets such as that then in search of any sick and maltreated horses so she could take them in. The story of Mrs. Ho, who was the wife of some consul general, was that she was also having a problem, psychological problem, according to Salim, the husband of Annette, that she also went into the markets, found out the horses who were lazy, who were sick and ill and maltreated, and he would beat up the horsemen and took the horses in her custody, took care of them, and ultimately she was put to jail for her actions. And this is the very thing which Salim is trying to tell his wife, that your love for the animals possibly may result into such a harsh thing. And this goes to further break Annette. So Enid felt hopeless, voiceless, rage against cruel remoteness, hostility, polarization, oversimplification. What had happened to them? She hated scenes, but her chair scraped angrily as she dropped her napkin and rose to leave the dining table. She stepped out onto the veranda, gazing abstractedly at the fireflies. In the still suffocating darkness outside, the radicalism of their Cambridge days had faded for both of them. In her case, it had dissolved into vague defensiveness about her own realities. It had become a style, she thought angrily, to rub the entire guilt of the white nation into her soul with the personal venom. Controversies and anger rankled, hanging solid in the air between them. So that is the description of the gap which has occurred between Annette and Salim. Though they were Cambridge graduates and they had very good attraction towards each other, but that passion has gone away. Now the hostility and polarization is there, and that makes her sad and upset. That is why she grows hopeless. She grows angry, but she cannot make a scene. She does not like this. But then she remembers her good ways of life in the beginning, and now controversies and anger rankled, hanging solid in the air between them. So, not only the domestic front is causing her become traumatic, but also the outside scene is causing the same. That is the plight of all the working women, that not only outside the home they have to face harassment, they have to face anger, they have to face eyes staring, they have to face touching unnecessarily, and then they have to face the similar kind of psychological trauma at home as well. So this story is the particular story of a woman who wants to work, who wants to give benefit to the people around herself in the country, but then she is treated in such a way. So in that way, the husband is not treating in a very good way, and so she comes out in order to prove that she's not weak, and she calls Hassan and says that she needs an inquiry in order to ask who that person was, who that woman was, who stole the meat, and she needs to call the police and she needs to talk about that. So in this way, she comes to the zoo and asks the San to manage who that woman was, and they are able to recognize her by telling that the woman was sleek, thin, and immediately Hussein recognizes that she was Tara. Her name was Tara, and she was Gatekeeper's wife. And she is called before Annette in the zoo in order to give a statement. The woman is appearing in a very powerful appearance, though she is poor. For example, we find description of the woman that she was a poorly dressed woman, but strikingly good looking woman. A mangy, snot stained baby perched on her hip, and a dust encrusted toddler trailed by her side, holding on to her faded yellow shalwar. Now, all these things go to show that she's very poor, but she's got the great courage in her mind, in her body, and that is why she looks rebellious and defiant instead of looking contrite or evasive. She stands before Annette without any fear, without any sense of guilt, and she therefore is showing that she's more powerful with her children, with her husband, with her activity of stealing meat, rather than Annette, who wanted to get sympathy from her husband, and in return she got apathetic behavior. So Tara and Annette are now standing face to face each other. One well-fed, well-bred white woman, other very poor black, and then a family woman having children. And so the dialogue goes on, but the interpreter is Hussein, who is standing between these two women, so that they may not talk direct to each other. And so the investigation reveals that. The woman claims that she got the food, or rather snatched the food, from the cage of Hira on two grounds. Number one, that the animal wanted her to come and get a part of his food, because without that, the animal would not eat the food. No, Annette is not ready to believe that. But this thing is irritating to the maximum level. But the woman insists on that the test can be taken, a trial can be taken, that unless she gets some food out of the food of the animal does not come forward and take the food. It stops, it waits for the woman. And so the woman claims that this animal is a type of dervish, is a type of big kind of person who waits for her to come. And secondly, she is very poor and she cannot feed her children most of the time, and that's why she comes forward and gets some food out of that. So what is the harm in that? This is the difference between the lover of the animals, Annette, and the lover of her family, Tara. This is the difference between the two. And so, in that way, she is once again, this Annette is once again defiantly faced by the woman, and she is unable to do anything like that. The next day, again, she meets her husband Salim in Gymkhana Club and tells him the whole story. And not in a way that she is going to show her power, but rather she is telling the story. I mean, the things are happening with pleasantries with other people also, and the question mark on her marriage and on her way of life was there, that she was losing her power, because she didn't receive that emotional support, that passionate support from her husband, as possibly Tara was receiving from her husband. So in that way, writer further explains that although they had rich life, they attended gymkhana, they had very good food, but still, the woman was not that powerful. That she can even face Tara, she can even give punishment to her, she can even talk to her in the loud tones. That's the kind of weakness inside that Annette. Continuing with that, the life of these two people continues to be discussed to show that how affluent they have been, how good they have been, inherited house from the father, and so living in that, doing everything in order to improve the life, and ultimately she had decided to get a job of the zoo superintendent, and she was doing that, but all these things have become faded, as she is unable to face Tara, she is unable to give Hira the best kind of food because it's not possible for her to do so. Here again, the reverberation of the novel Maat Smoke by Mohsen Hamid is there. There also we have Mumtaz, who is very much educated, though not white woman, but still having a deep connection with American life. She was also having frustrations like that when the husband was not paying attention to her, when she didn't want to remain at home, when she wanted to go out and work there. There was no possibility for that. She was expected to take care of the sons and daughters. Just one son she had, by the way. I'm sorry for that. But she wanted to come outside. She wanted to write something, and for that she adopted a very wrong way to do so, possibly unjustified in our society. The same thing is here, but with a different angle. That this woman wanted to do something, but the social setup, but the women of her kind and the husband all are making difficult that she can perform any duty like that. So in that way, the story continues. This man, her husband was not ready to pay her that much attention. He just wanted to take care of the food, of the things, whatever were happening. So in that way, their life had a very different angle where they were much provided. So they were not required to steal the meat as Tara was required to steal because she was unable to find all that. So in that way, the story ends, but with a punchline. And this is the last punchline. It's over, isn't it? Was all she could manage to say. When the husband put the question, what happened to her, investigations at the zoo, Annette replied just once, it's over, it's finished, isn't it? Is it not finished or not? Because she is now convinced that the life has to go on in the same way as it has been going on. The husband will not pay the attention to her artificial happiness in Gymkhana and other places with the servants will keep on. Her show of authority will keep on in the zoo, but the things will go as they are. So that goes to show that even if a woman wants to reform and do good in the society, as Annette wanted to do in the zoo, for the sake of the animals, she was unable to do because no encouragement comes from any side. She is cheated and deceived and rebelled against by the servants, by the woman, gatekeeper's wife, and then her husband as well. So in this way, she becomes weak with the passage of time. The writer wants to give the indication that a strong woman, if she is facing trauma at home, psychological trouble at home, she would, with the passage of time, become weak, and her power to reform the society and her interest to improve the things will finish. And ultimately, she would resign, saying, it's over, isn't it? Asking a question whether the over thing has come or not. On the other hand, we have the defiant people like Tara, like her husband, like other people who would obey, but just to continue with the things, and they would do the things what they want to do. And in that way, difference of women, the post-colonial women, though she's also colonized. Here, a colonizer is possibly being colonized psychologically, but the colonized person in the shape of Tara is showing her power. So that is the modern Orientalism that can be taken care of here by saying that the Orient is designing such things with which it can face the Occident, with which it can face the colonizer, with which it can have its own way in its place. That is something which is the new normal of the post colonial theory. And that's why I call it neo-colonialism, as well as I call it something which is related to new orientalism, modern orientalism. This story is the best indication to that. Again, the women characters talked about here are Annette and Tara. They are really very different worlds they live in, and they have very different people around them. One's word is very short but very strong, and she is very much interested in her word. Others' word is larger, bigger, comfortable, but she is unable to, create that passionate emotional environment because her husband is not ready to give her a chance like that. Society is not ready to give her a chance like that. So, in this way, the powerful women even may fail if the good environment is not given to the woman like Annette. One needs to consider the story in the sense of women's plight if they are treated, mishandled, if not mishandled, let us use another word, that if they are not given a chance and not supported, they may turn into the people who are unable to do good things in the world. And even if they are given a chance, they may be feeling psychologically shocked and as a result feeling weakness of that. So that was the lesson of today. Thank you very much for watching this. Hopefully seeing you in some next video. If you people have enjoyed this, if you people have understood anything about the short story, do give your comment and hit the subscribe button as well. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.